Okay, if you're struggling to pass your exit quiz on conditionals and biconditionals, this might help you out a little bit. All right, let's talk about the basics. A conditional. Remember, a conditional is your if-then statement. Whatever follows the word if is your hypothesis. And we represent the hypothesis with the letter P, lowercase p. It is a rose, that's your conclusion. Remember, your conclusion follows the word then, and we represent it with a Q. So if we were going to write this sentence, this conditional, in simple form, we would say P arrow Q, which reads if P, then Q. That arrow there reads if then, and your hypothesis conclusion. So if a flower rhymes with nose, then it is a rose. Okay, so the first thing that we can do to a conditional is our converse. Remember, converse is flipping your original conditional, because we can do a back flip in our Converse shoes. So we're going to take our Q and our P and flip them. We had originally had PQ. Now we're going to flip our P and flip our Q. So Q is going to go here now, and P is going to go here. So symbolically, the converse of a statement is Q arrow P, which reads if Q, then P. And in this case, it reads if a flower is a rose, then it rhymes with nose. Okay, so the converse here, if a flower is a rose, Q, then it rhymes with nose, which was our original P. So we have taken our P and Q and we have flipped them so that it reads QP. That's our converse. Okay, our inverse, remember inverse, the way that I said that you could remember it unless you come up with your own way. The opposite of in is out, or the first two letters tell you what to do. What do? I negate it. I negate my original conditional, meaning I take the opposite of my original conditional. So my original conditional is P then Q. So we want to take the opposite of it. So we want to do not P, then not Q, or opposite of P, then opposite of Q. So the opposite of being a flower that rhymes with nose is going to be a flower doesn't rhyme with nose. And the opposite of it being a rose is going to be it's not a rose. Okay, so our inverse is taking the opposite of our hypothesis. So a flower does not rhyme with nose, then it is not a rose. So the opposite of in is out, insert a not, insert a negative, I negate it, however you remember inverse. But remember, you're just inserting a not from our original hypothesis and our conclusion. Okay, and then we have our contrapositive. Contrapositive is that big long word, so we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff to it. We're going to take our original conditional, we're going to flip it. So instead of P then Q, we have Q then P. And after we flip it, we're also going to negate it. So flipping, first of all, would be if a flower is a rose, then it does not, or then it rhymes with nose. So that's our converse. And then negating it, a flower is not a rose, then it does not rhyme with nose, would be our contrapositive. So we're flipping our converse, Q then P, and we're negating it. So our final contrapositive should be that if a flower is not a rose, so not Q, then it does not rhyme with nose. So not P. All right, and then finally we learned about a biconditional. And remember, a biconditional can only be written if the converse and the original conditional are both true. So if both of these are true, then we can write a biconditional. Alright, so let's look to see if these are both true. If a flower rhymes with nose, then it is a rose. That's true unless you can think of a flower that I can't think of that rhymes with nose that isn't a rose. But I think any flower that rhymes with nose has got to be a rose. So that's true. Good there. Now check our converse. If a flower is a rose, then it rhymes with nose. Well, that's definitely true because you cannot deny that a flower rhymes with nose. It does. You can't say it doesn't. Okay, so since these are both true, we can come down here and write our biconditional. Symbolically, your biconditional is just P and Q, but we have a double arrow in there. And that double arrow means if and only if. So that's why we want to identify our hypothesis and our conclusion. So we can say, remember P, a flower rhymes with nose. We got to put our if and only if in there. And then our Q, it is a rose. So just double check, make sure that this is true and that you have your P, and if and only if, and then your Q. So your P, a flower rhymes with nose, that should be your hypothesis, and that is if and only if, that's your double arrow, it is a rose. So that's your conclusion. Okay, and then finally for review is working on symbolic form of sentences, even if it's not P's and Q's. The only time you're going to have no P's and Q's, and later on we're going to get into R's and S's, the only time that it can be whatever you want it to be isn't really when you want it to be, and that's when it's been designated as something else. So if I flat out tell you that M is 2 plus 2 equals 4, and I flat out tell you that X represents Sally is rich, that's when you're allowed to start mixing letters up and stuff. Otherwise, your conditional is always P and Q. This isn't a conditional. This is just a set of statements that have been represented by letters. So if I were to say, you know, how can I represent 2 plus 2 is not equal to 4? I'm going to put a little slash through that equal sign. So what if I said 2 plus 2 does not equal 4? How would you represent that symbolically? Well, we said that this sentence or this statement is an M, and now I've said that it does not equal 4, so I'm doing the opposite of M. So that's the opposite of M right there. Or if I said, you know, how do I represent this conditional symbolically with these given letters? So if Sally is poor, then 2 plus 2 is 4. So remember, this is a conditional, so I know I definitely want to have that arrow. So I can say Sally is poor. That's the opposite of what we designated to be X. So it's the opposite of my X, and then it is my original 2 plus 2 is 4. It is my original M. So symbolically, I just need to make sure that I'm staying true to what has been given. If you go back to what we were just doing with our original conditional statements and converse, inverse, contrapositive, all that, those are designated letters. P's and Q's are designated letters anytime we're given a conditional. But there's some times where they'll tell us, hey, this is M and this is X. That's when you can stray away from P and Q, but only when it's in context of the problem. And in this case, they've told us that we're no longer using P's and Q's. All right, I hope this video has helped. Let's try taking that quiz again.